Hi, everybody. Welcome to Vault Hours. Really appreciate everyone joining us this morning. My name's Chris. I'm marketing manager here. With us today, we also have Casey, Ryan, Nasser on our team. Special guests we'll talk with later this morning, Oliver. And really, Vault Hours is a chance to get to speak with you guys, our community. We really appreciate you folks, and we're really looking forward to chatting today. So yeah, as a reminder, Vault Hours is meant to be completely interactive. You're our community. Please chime in with any questions along the way. We can even bring you on the virtual stage, and we're really looking forward to speaking with everyone today. So, a little bit about today's agenda before we proceed. We'll be taking a quick poll at the beginning. Really want to keep this interactive. And then we'll be highlighting a security champion, our special guest, Oliver. We'll talk through Nasser's passkey journey. We'll have a demo about how to use passkeys for your vault access. And then we'll talk through some new and upcoming features, Credential Exchange Protocol, highlighting our member access report, security readiness kit, which was inspired by our community, by all of you all, and then talk about bring Bitwarden to work. As I noted beforehand, feel free to join in on screen. Just note in the chat that you have a question. I see that we already have a couple questions in the chat. So we'll be sure to get to that. Any initial questions? Let's see in the chat. First time here and would love to hear some feedback about desktop macros, native global autofill options. I see that's a feature in Bitwarden roadmap. If you need testers, I can join. We'll definitely. Ryan, do you have an update on that?
Yeah, so something like this, it's on the Bitwarden roadmap. We're investigating it. That includes, like the whole global through the desktop applications. If we run a beta for that, you'll see information go live on the community, either on our Bitwarden subreddit and also on the community forums. We'll make announcements when we're open for beta testing for something like that. I also wanted to take in the chat as well, there was an ask for any updates regarding sharing items directly from the vault and also the backup of attachments. Bert, this is something we've been looking at for a little while. We had begun some initial groundwork for this sort of thing, but at the moment it's the Bitwarden architecture is set up a little bit differently, and it's going to take a little bit of work to get that done. So nothing really to update you on terms of sharing items directly. Backup of attachments is also on our roadmap, still under investigation. The engineering team can only do so much at one time, and so don't worry, we're still aware of it, but we have nothing to update you at this point. There were also a
Great.
couple in the Q&A. Sorry to go, but I think the first one from Daniel about logging with passkeys, I think we're going to be talking about that here soon. So we'll move on to that one. And then Casey, would you like? Well, I could. Whoever wants to talk about the settings changing between persisting between logouts.
Take it
Oh,
away.
okay, yeah, sure. I just didn't want to be the one talking the whole time. But yes, we, especially we recently introduced some new settings for adjusting the layout of your browser extension, like having the fill button there or have it not there. At the moment, there are only very few settings that actually persist between the accounts. Almost everything is done on a per client basis. A lot of that is by design, so that if you are on a different device, say a work laptop or on your mobile laptop, on your work laptop or on your mobile device, a personal device, you can have different settings for different security profiles for each of them. We are looking into what it would take to have stuff persist across accounts, but that wasn't how the clients were initially built. So we're looking into it.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate it, Ryan. Definitely, if you have questions along the way, put them in chat. We'll get to them. But really appreciate it, everyone. All right. We'd like to start off with a poll. As a reminder, last session, if everyone joined us last session, we had a poll up top that talked about passkeys and why you utilize passkeys the most. And over 50% of folks who responded during our poll said that it's highly phishing resistant, and that's why they love using passkeys. So we thought we'd start with another poll question today. And if you go to the right side of your screen, you'll see a new poll live. We just want to know, what kind of Bitwarden subscription do you currently use? We always, love to talk to a community and ask about that. So yeah, looks like we have a lot of premium individuals, which is really great, and then enterprise clients, and that's really great. We really like to know what our community is coming from. So yeah, we really appreciate that.
Ooh, we
Wow.
forgot to put families. Families is missing. I'm going to put
Oh,
my
you're
vote
right.
under premium
Families is
individual for
missing.
not having families.
Yeah. Wow. So yeah, looks like we have 9 for premium individual and 3 for enterprise. That's really interesting. We really appreciate that. We'll keep that poll up. Feel free to keep, if you haven't yet participated, feel free to add your vote. But yeah, we really like to keep this interactive. Really appreciate that. Coming up next, we'd like to introduce Casey and our team, who will introduce our special guest today.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. So Chris has already kind of given a little bit of a taster of this, but we have a special guest today for Vault Hours. This is Oliver Needham, who is calling all the way from the UK, where he works as an event production company called Storm Events as a virtual events and IT administrator, so managing that event coordination, but then also company password management with Bitwarden. And I really had the pleasure of speaking with Oliver fairly recently for a security champion case study where he shared such an interesting experience as a Bitwarden personal user who brought Bitwarden to his workplace. So very similar to a story I'm sure a lot of you on this call are aware of. And so we invited Oliver to Vault Hours today just to speak about a little bit more about his story, his experience with Bitwarden, and especially, bringing it into his workplace, those two very different use cases for Bitwarden and what that experience was like. Did I miss anything, Oliver? Anything else you'd
No,
like to add to that
no,
quick
I think that
introduction?
you've got that all there. Thank you very much for inviting me, and it's yeah, great to be here. I've
Yeah.
watched a few of these before, and as Casey says, it was great to kind of speak to you before and kind of share my story. So yeah, really happy to be here today.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great that you're here. So, I guess kind of going back to the beginning, one of my first questions is what made Bitwarden really stand out for securing, passwords in your personal life? Is there anything about Bitwarden that drew you in that aspect?
Yeah, so originally I used a password manager. I was a beta tester for a VPN that they used. They kind of brought out a password manager product. The product no longer exists, by the way. But I saw an article from a technologist in the radio broadcast industry who kind of shared how he was using Bitwarden, and kind of drew me in of like, oh, okay, that's something a bit different, and a bit better than what I was previously using. And the killer features for me from where I was previously was kind of the desktop apps were much better, and also one-time passwords were in the app rather than having to use another third-party app to get them. The price, as someone has already put in the chat, the price of kind of an individual was really attractive, and actually hasn't changed for me in 4 years. It's been $10 ever since I've been part of this. So don't put it up. It's really great value, and yeah, so it was kind of really easy for me to go right. Let's move over to it. Got my wife on board, and yeah, we've been using it ever since.
I love that. I think a lot of people on this call as well have that similar experience of, adopting Bitwarden for themselves and then bringing family members on board as well. I've done that with my fiance, and, I think in earlier Vault Hours as well, we've shared a little bit about trying to get all the other family members on board just because you're only as secure as your weakest link, especially whenever you're sharing passwords like that.
Exactly, and because often me and my wife have conversations about what other people doing, other couples in our lives, and we're like, how do they get by without having a shared calendar and having a shared password manager?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I can definitely attest to that as well. So I mean, that was kind of like how you started using it in your personal life, right? But you are clearly very much involved in the IT aspect of your job as well. So, in your position at Storm Events, how were they managing passwords beforehand? What did that look like?
So originally, yeah, I joined in 2021 Storm Events. It's been just over 3 years since I've been here, and it was kind of a combination of spreadsheets, Excel spreadsheets, classic, and also Monday.com boards. That's how they were managing a lot of the information when I joined. And coming from a previous technical job, kind of in the radio industry, we were using kind of a secure password file with a different product. But it was at least one central place that we could all access that password or those passwords that we needed to share. So it was quite painful, if I'm honest, coming and experiencing that. But totally going that's how people use it. If you don't know difference, sometimes that's what you do, and it gets you by. But it was definitely an opportunity that I saw kind of coming in and going, I think this is something that we can probably improve.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially two different locations for that kind of non-syncing passwords, like both a Monday.com board and a spreadsheet. That's just not something that's going to be accessible most of the time. I hope everyone on the call, it sounds like we have a lot of personal users, but in your, day-to-day work lives, I really hope that that's not how you're managing passwords because it gives me a little bit of a heart attack even just to think about. So, I mean, clearly there was a problem, right? You came in, you could see that that was not the best way to do that. So, what made you think that Bitwarden might be a good fit to kind of solve that problem of managing passwords at storm events?
So I think it's that classic thing of everyone's trying to do the right thing to start with, and it was right that the passwords were being managed in some way, even if it wasn't the most easiest. And we were also looking at a lot of information security in the company and going, we want to improve those side of things as well. So building all of that in, we could go right in a policy somewhere. It says you should use a password manager. So let's have a look at can we corporately provide a password manager? Was one of the questions that I had, and I was using it personally, even for work purposes, to kind of put a collection together or put a folder and say, right, these are all my work passwords that I need to manage. So let's look at that. And I knew that if it was making things easier in my personal life, it would make things easier at work. So it was just a case of let's give it a go and let's see what happens if I ask.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's interesting that you mentioned that because I was talking to another customer recently who also started using Bitwarden at work, but not really telling anyone, right? Just started to kind of manage their own passwords that way. And IT saw it on as an extension on their work laptop and reached out saying like, "Hey, does this actually work? Like we're investigating password managers." And that was kind of how it was adopted within their organization. So that kind of shadow IT, right, just kind of adopting it on your own is like a really, I don't know, at least in my opinion, a very interesting way to bring it onto your team. But it happens a lot
With
more
my
frequently.
infosec hat on, I will always say use the things that your IT provide for a reason.
Yeah.
But my other hat is very much I got a note to say this is kind of as a cheeky move. If your company is saying you should use a password manager, ask them, will you provide me one then? And you can then at
Mm-hmm.
that point have a door of going, I use Bitwarden in my personal life. I find it's a great thing. Why not give this a go? And I've done that in previous companies and kind of hit a brick wall. Here, it was very much I was in a position as well where I could kind of push it and bring people around and kind of go, yeah, let's give this a go all together. You don't
Mm-hmm.
always get that. Totally get loads of different organizations, different things, but I think it's a kind of a way to go. You would like us to do these things securely. Let's just take a look at this and see what we can do.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when you kind of suggested that to the team, what were some key things that really, drew them in? Like what really convinced them that this might be a good solution to even test out?
So yeah, when I was kind of recommending it, Bitwarden, it was bringing. I had a pitch essentially. I'd gone all those things that I just said. Use it in my personal life. Why not try and use it here? And we knew we were doing these things, and I took it kind of to the person that was looking after the information security at the time, and one of our directors, and basically made a business case, just a one pager of this is why we should use it. And I got together a few people who had expressed interest in that, and kind of that was the important thing for me with that was a mixture of people who'd used password management before and people that hadn't. So we had people who had been using other products in their personal lives and people that had no clue, maybe just saving everything in the browser. So it meant that I could kind of bring them on, and I ended up using the term Bitward Guardians, that they were people that would come on, help and me administrate for a start, making sure I wasn't the only person that was kind of doing this, and then bring them along for the ride so then they could advocate for it in other parts of the business as well. I manually imported a lot of the initial logins and credentials from various different places, and then over a course of kind of a month got those people that I'd initially brought on to do it together, give feedback. We were in good conversations. We're giving each other hints and tips of things that we discovered. So that was really, really cool. And then essentially building that on, bringing more people in, and then essentially running out to the whole company and going, this is what we're going to do. Had a page on the intranet that I'd created saying, these are the ways to use it, or these are best practices. So it was kind of really easy to get going once I'd got that core group really using it in their day-to-day life, or their daily lives. Also going where it was a problem, where there were things that weren't so easy for whatever reason, and kind of going, can we do this? How can we do that? It meant that I could improve some of the policies we're using and things like that. So yeah, it was a really good experience for me of bringing people and bringing people along for that.
Yeah, it sounds like having that kind of like that team in your corner was like a really key part of the onboarding process, was being able to problem solve and convince the rest of the company the benefits of it, especially with people in different kinds of roles. That's really cool to kind of hear people coming together in terms of better password security. It's definitely a thing to bond over, considering we also have this vault hours where people just talk about different ways to secure your passwords. So I love that. So since kind of like doing that whole onboarding process, right, and getting everyone at Storm Events to adopt a password manager solution like Bitwarden, have you noticed anything that has changed within the organization about just making your security posture stronger? Is there anything that kind of any other poor password practices that were uncovered during this onboarding process, and now that you're actually using Bitwarden productively?
So there was, we used some of the reports that are available to kind of go, we've got duplicate passwords all over the place. So let's nip that in the bud. We've got Bitwarden, we can generate passwords. I don't know 90% of my passwords, as all the other Bitwarden users know. You know maybe a handful that you do have to type out manually because you can't copy paste for whatever reason, and your master password. Everything else is just in Bitwarden. And so I'm finding that with my colleagues as well. Very similar. They'll know a few passwords really well, and their passphrases typically, which is even better because we've got in my kind of infosec hats, I also do all the infosec training, so been able to kind of push that through there. And again, that whole thing of, if you're you're going to use a password manager, provide one, but also here's good password practices at the same time. And so that's really come through, and I've been really pleased with the kind of results of what we've done with that over the past year in particular. Other thing is onboarding of individuals is so much easier. This month I've had to onboard 3 people alone, taking us to kind of 40 users in total, which means that I've had to introduce them to Bitwarden, but they've got it really quickly. And I go, these are the passwords that you need. You'll find them here. And then using the kind of the groups and collections, I've been able to give the right users the right passwords at the right time. They don't need everything all at once. They can get them all kind of piecemeal. So yeah, those have been really good. And I think accountability in terms of when a password needs to change. We do need to change passwords occasionally because they're systems that require us to do so. And then we can kind of share that information really quickly. Just say, hey, we've updated this bunch of passwords rather than just 2 or 3, 15 at a time. Sync your vaults if you haven't already, and off you go. So those sort of things have been really useful, and people are just a lot more aware of those sort of passwords. And I'm asked to create a password which can be easily typed out. It's not just let me in, for example. It's got other characters in and what have you, but they're aware that it needs to be a bit more complicated. One of I see Gently has put a question in there, kind of asking if we're using hardware keys. I am the only user that is using a hardware key, and the reason for that is we found that just our nature of being an events business We need to just get things done. And one of the positions I take in our security kind of posture is the balance of being able to get things done versus being secure at the same time. So that example of being able to read a password out to somebody because they can't copy paste, they're like a freelancer or something like that. So I need to give them a password, and it needs to be secure, but it can't be overly complicated. So adding hardware keys in makes that a lot more difficult for us, unfortunately, just to get things to them. We've not found that we've had any issues with kind of the master password, and I know we've got the whole thing about on a new device you'll have to do an email one-time passcode type thing. I think all of those things keep us secure, and we kind of accept any of the other risks that come along with it. But yeah, hopefully that answers your question gently in the chat.
I mean, yeah, having that balance, right, of security and productivity. I think having an enterprise password manager helps with that. Absolutely. It kind of straddles that line, right? But it's also important to have a good understanding of your own security posture and what's going to make things easier for your users while still maintaining really secure password practices. Okay, looks like there's a couple things in the chat. I'm just gonna finish it off with the last question for you. You have been absolutely fantastic answering all of these questions from us. But lastly, do you have anything you would recommend for any kind of personal users who are thinking that maybe Bitwarden or a enterprise password manager might be a good fit for their organization? Do you have any recommendations for them that you'd like to share?
Yeah, kind of a few things there. So as kind of mentioned, share how it's improved your personal life. That you've only got one place to look for all your passwords, and you're not having to worry about that too much. The other thing I mentioned that I kind of look after our InfoSec training is that it's not just when we do that InfoSec training, it's not just kind of protecting the company, but it's protecting the individuals. We do that training to help people in their personal lives. So why wouldn't you encourage people to look after their passwords in their personal life much better as a whole company? And yeah, I found that it has made people think about that more in their personal lives. So I think that's a great pitch that you can do. Mentioned it already, bring a few people along for the journey. It's always great to have kind of allegiance in the company of other people that are with you along that. And as I suggested, if you want to push it into your organization, ask, and you've got a security policy somewhere that says you need a password manager, ask them, will you provide one? Suggest Bitwarden along the way. It feels a bit cheeky at times. I've definitely had that thrown at me before, but I think it's reasonable to kind of ask these questions sometimes.
Absolutely. And might I add as well, for enterprise plans as well, you are able to sponsor family organizations for individual users. So if you're at a company that already uses Bitwarden or is thinking of adopting Bitwarden, you can also benefit from that in your personal life, right? And your users, your other employees within the organization can benefit of just better password security in their personal life. Spouses, teenagers seems to be a problem in the chat, but like children, right? Like that kind of thing is just really helpful to have that blueprint for password security. But
Get
thank
some of
you
the points
so
there
much.
about the physical key. I keep mine
Yeah.
on this lanyard, which has a fob, which means I can't get into the building. So if I can't get into work, I can't do secure stuff at the same time. So yeah, I've got a YubiKey like people have mentioned in the chat, and it's never not on me. If I can't get into work, I've got a bigger problem going on.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that's like a really good segue. Also, we always recommend if you use hardware keys, right, especially like YubiKeys, you want to have a backup. Right. So keep that in a secure place. If you have it on your lanyard, maybe have a different one at home or somewhere in a separate location. Just that way you don't completely lock yourself out. Very similar to having a spare key to your house, right? Like that's something that's pretty darn important. But yeah, keep the conversation going in the chat regarding hardware keys. Any other questions you have for Oliver as well? I'm sure you'll be on for maybe a couple more minutes. So feel free to answer questions in the chat. But I think everyone say like we really appreciate you hopping on. If you also want to learn more about Oliver's story, we have our security champion spotlight case study detailing all the nitty gritty details of his experience on the Bitwarden website. So I can also add a link to that as well.
Thank you guys. Thank you, Oliver, so much for joining us. Really appreciate your time, especially since you're across the pond. Really appreciate it, and it was really very interesting to learn your journey from personal Bitwarden use to bringing it to your company. So really appreciate that. And thank you so much, Casey. That was wonderful. Really appreciate that. Yeah, we'll be answering any questions in the chat as we go. Looks like we're really starting up a conversation about YubiKeys. I have a couple, one YubiKey that I'm trying to utilize a little more. So really, really interesting. Keep the conversation going in the chat. Yeah. So next we'll be talking with Nasser, who will be highlighting his passkey journey.
Yeah, thanks so much, Chris and Oliver. That was really great sharing your experience. So before I jump into my personal journey with passkeys, I want to take some time to touch on some of the features and benefits of passkeys. We start with the fact that they're really impossible to guess because they're based on these strong cryptographic principles. They don't rely on predictable patterns or user-generated information like traditional passwords. And then passkeys are also different for each site. So basically, you have these unique key pairs. So each site gets its own unique public-private key pair for authentication. The private key is stored by the user in a password manager or store like Bitwarden. And again, the advantage of Bitwarden here is those passkeys are syncable. You can use them across operating systems, different clients, and they're always available to you. So there is what we call this concept of origin binding, and I've touched on this on a previous Vault Hours, but passkeys are really tied to a specific domain or site. And then there's this idea of no reuse. So passkeys are not really reused across different sites. They're very unique, ensuring site-specific security. And it goes without saying that there's no need to depend on your memory. I have friends who still have all their passwords in their mind, and they have different hashes in their mind. And I think there's going to come a point where they'll just get so confused and have to use a password manager. I've tried to convince them; they don't listen. But you can rely on biometrics with passkeys to sign into your service, and in the background, your passkey authenticates you. And then there's this notion of asymmetric encryption. So basically, these passkeys they leverage what we call asymmetric encryption. So with the private key remains on your device, on your password manager, and the public key is shared on the site or the service you're trying to log into. So you're eliminating basically any shared secrets. And finally, these passkeys are phishing resistant because, as we mentioned earlier, they're really bound to a specific domain of the website. And then they use what we call the asymmetrical encryption that we touched on earlier, the public-private key interface. So in fact, there have been no incidents to date reported of any compromised keys. If you go and search the internet, look for it, there have been no incidents of compromised passkeys. So before I jump into my personal journey with passkeys, I want to take some time to touch on some of the, I touched on some of the features earlier, but I want to just mention that this is my unique journey. Your journey might be a little different. You might want to go all in at once. You might actually be a developer and you want to check out our passwordless.dev SDK and build passkey authentication into your site. So that's a completely different journey. But for me, I'm a user. So it starts with discovery. So you want to, become familiar with what passkeys are if you're not. So if you have questions, we have a really, really good FAQ, Bitwarden passkey FAQ that I can share shortly on our chat over here. And if you want to see which sites support passkeys, I implore you to check out a community-driven initiative sponsored by Bitwarden. It's called passkeyindex.io. And it's really your go-to resource to see all the services and sites that actually support passkeys. And this site is growing tremendously. There's so many new services coming on board. And then the second part to this is your initial setup. So obviously you want to try out your first passkey. One place I implore you to check out is passkeys.io. So this is like a mock-up site which allows you to log in via passkeys. So pretty much a live demo. So you can store your passkey in a password manager like Bitwarden and test it out across devices or your browser plugin and just get an idea of what that experience looks like firsthand of just using your biometrics or just signing in really fast into passkeys.io. The third step is expanding your usage of passkeys. So now that you've kind of tested your first passkey, you want to maybe go a little further. So, you can check which of your existing services already support passkeys. And I mentioned to you passkeyindex.io. And you'll be surprised at the number of large platforms, especially that are making a push for their users to leverage passkeys. If you're a Google user, you're getting inundated by, hey, sign in with passkey. Amazon, Apple, so many services are pushing their users here, which tells us that this move is going to persist, it's going to continue, it's going to grow. So try creating passkeys for those services that you use quite frequently. See what the user experience is like. See if it works for you. And of course, pay attention to the differences. Some services may have a smoother experience than others. Some have a better UI. It's really different workflows. It's some sites might just be using passkeys for two-factor authentication alone rather than login. So again, as I mentioned, there's different workflows, there's different user experiences. Just get used to it, see what works for you, where you can use passkeys. The next step is, and this is kind of important, is to provide feedback. So passkeys are not, I wouldn't say they're completely new, but they're fairly newer paradigm. But adoption is growing at a blistering pace, right? But not all services get it right. The experience, as I mentioned earlier, is a little disjointed on some of the service. So if a sign-in process feels clunky or confusing, you want to let that vendor know. Your feedback as a user, as an end user, really helps improve the experience for everyone. And I'm pretty sure a lot of these vendors are listening to their user base. And then some companies are really in the process of still figuring out what those best practices are. So your input really, really makes a big difference. And then step 5, you want to go full or close to full adoption, right? So some people don't want to move in that direction. Some people are faster to adopt things. So you want to see, you want to replace passwords wherever with passkeys wherever you can. You want to be able to enjoy that faster and more secure sign-in process across your devices. And I personally can attest to the fact that, for me, they're working really seamlessly. Apart from a few very minor hiccups, they're working really well where I have them enabled. I use them on multiple services like LinkedIn, Coinbase, Twitter, and a bunch of others. So again, that's my personal journey. I just wanted to share that with the user base. Now, if you're a developer, as I mentioned, that's a completely different journey you would want to adopt. You want to test out the passwordless.dev SDK because you don't want to go and start building your own spec, own tokenization mechanism. You really want to understand what those workflows look like. So if you're a developer and you want to enable your website with passkeys, go check out passwordless.dev. And that maybe in the future, I would do a different presentation to show you what that journey would look like. But yeah, that has been my journey with passkeys. If you have any questions, feel free to throw them here, and I'll share some of those links on the chat. Chris, back to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nasser. How many passkeys would you say you have? Like a handful?
Physical? I mean, the passkey stored in Bitwarden.
Right. How many passkeys
for
do you
different? I think I'm using them across at least a minimum of 10 services right now.
That's great. Yeah, I should jump on that bandwagon. I've got a couple, but definitely looking to adopt more. Just kind of the future of passwords and passwordless solutions. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Nasser. Yeah, it looks like we're talking in the chat about YubiKeys and passwordless index. We've got a good idea there. Really appreciate it, Daniel. We'll look into better searching passkeyindex.io. Really appreciate that. All right. Next up, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Next up, speaking of passkeys, we have Don on our team who will kind of do a relatively quick demo of how you log in to your Bitwarden Vault via passkeys.
Chris. I'm just going to share my screen here. Okay, hello everybody. I'm Don on the technical team and just nerding out with all this chat about passkeys and hardware keys. So today we're going to visit the Bitwarden website and show how to log in and decrypt your vault with just a passkey stored on your hardware key. And as we've seen in the chat, one of the great reasons to do this is say you misplace or lose your phone or your laptop, if you still have that hardware key on your keychain, you can decrypt your vault. So from bitwarden.com, I'm going to head over to the login button. And from here, we just tap the login with passkey. And rather than having to pick an option here, we can just touch the hardware key. I'm going to put in the PIN that I have set up on my hardware key, tap it again, and then we are in the vault. So it's pretty quick. So I'm just going to do it one more time. So without having to do the master password, we're just going to hit login with passkey, touch the security key, enter the PIN if you have one set, touch it again, and you're in. Now where we set this up is from settings in the web vault, and then on to security. And it's currently in beta, but you'll be able to set up your login with passkey down here. And depending on your browser, you can make it decrypt. So currently it requires PRF enabled browsers such as Chromium, but Firefox is also starting to roll out support with hopefully Mac OS coming soon. We also think that it's a good idea if you set up a PIN on your hardware key to make it larger than 4 digits. And the benefit of this is that you can have multiple hardware keys with that passkey stored on it. And that's basically it. Super easy, super simple, and helps make sure that you're not going to get locked out. So thanks for watching.
Thank you so much, Don. That's really, really great. I need to start using it on my own Bitwarden Vault. It's really, really helpful. So next, we'll go through kind of new and upcoming updates from the team. And first up, we'll talk about the Credential Exchange Protocol. I think Nasser.
Yeah, thanks. I think we're heavy on passkeys today. So back to the topic of passkeys, there's been some really cool announcements from FIDO, which is like it stands for Fast Identity, the Fast Identity Online Alliance, and it's an industry consortium formed in 2012 with the goal of creating these open, scalable standards for secure authentication. It includes organizations like Google, Microsoft, Apple, Bitwarden, and the like. So as I mentioned, Bitwarden is a member of this alliance, and as part of a key working group, it has helped put together a standard for passkeys, passkey portability, and I should say credential portability across services and different platforms. So this standard is what we refer to as the Credential Exchange Protocol, which I'll call CXP just for simplicity. And again, this CXP defines data structures and formats of how these credentials data is stored across various systems and can be transferred easily from system to system and securely. So again, why is CXP needed? Cross-platform passkey portability. Again, CXP enables users to move their passkeys seamlessly across different devices and platforms. And this has been a big worry for many people. Do I get stuck into one vendor, one system? What if I want to move my passkey around securely, right? So with CXP, it means you can set up a passkey on one device and easily access it from another without really complex sync processes, whether switching from iOS or you're moving to Android or vice versa, or using multiple devices in some cases, right? This portability, this standard allows you to ensures that your passkeys remain accessible and usable, giving you the flexibility on how you interact with these secure systems. So again, I think this freedom significantly will enhance ultimately the user experience by eliminating device-specific limitations. And then we touched on secure transfer of credentials and secrets, right? So again, the core goal of this CXP is to ensure that the transfer of these passkeys and other sensitive data is performed very securely. So when moving data between different platforms and systems, there's a potential for security vulnerabilities to come up. especially if the processes and structures are not standardized, which is typically the case. So CXP addresses this lack of standardization by providing like robust encryption and secure methods for moving those secrets across different environments. The other one is the open choice of vendor or your credential service, right? So one of the biggest concerns with passkeys and similar technologies is the potential for getting locked in. So where users are tied into a specific ecosystem or service. So CXP really aims to reduce this risk by and allow people to start using passkeys more freely, right? By providing a universal method for securely transferring those passkeys between platforms. So today it is much easier to sync passkeys across your devices through a single password manager. But CXP aims to standardize the process for this transfer between different platforms. So you can easily kind of roam that digital landscape. I touched on standardization of exchange processes. There's a lack of standardization. And when you have standardization, you have improved security. There's better interoperability. You eliminate these inconsistencies that might introduce poor security into your systems and processes. So you can really help users and developers have more trust in the systems and that they're actually interacting with and using to transfer those credentials. And then adaptability for future technologies, right? Although initially designed for passkeys alone, CXP is going to be versatile and can be adapted to other types of sensitive data, such as mobile driver's licenses, your passwords, passport information. So again, this adaptability ensures that CXP will remain relevant as different technologies emerge over time and the digital ecosystem continues to evolve. So again, the CXP design allows for this secure exchange of different types of credentials, not just passkeys. And it's really, we strongly believe it's going to be a way to future-proof digital interactions. So again, the working group is still working on this. We anticipate momentum to pick up fairly shortly and to see some kind of implementation soon. I'm not going to provide a timeline, but hopefully Q2. So really, really looking forward to this.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Any questions with the audience? All right.
Feel free to drop whatever you have, and I'll try and answer what I can. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Nasser. Now on to Ryan on our team. We'll discuss our member access report.
All right. Hi, everybody. Y'all can hear me, right? Cool. It's been a while since I've chatted. So I have just two things to talk about here. We are getting towards the top of the hour here, so I'll just go through quickly. First is the member access report. This was released a couple of months ago, but it's a great way for administrators to go into the reports in the admin console and then see who has access to what. It's a very fast way to see who might have access to too many items. So if you look at the item in the rear, it's just a quick cutout of the report, but you can see how one person has access to 9 items, one has to 11. You might end up having somebody who might have access to 285 and go, oh wait, that person might not need that many items, and then you can hit the export button and actually get like a bigger list of all the things here. You see I have the CSV export listed up here, so you can see who's doing what and who has access to what. Super handy. And then we've been talking a lot about what could happen if you lose your two-factor authentication in the chat. Well, I've got something for you. That is, Bitwarden has put together a security readiness kit to help prevent lockout. The community has, a lot of community members have made their own versions of this and put something together. I've gone through and worked with them and grabbed some input, and we put together this Bitwarden security readiness kit where you can actually physically write down your master password and your two-step login recovery code and all the information you would need to access your account in an emergency. Now, of course, that's very sensitive information, so you need to treat it very securely as well. So you want to put it in a safe place like a fire-resistant safe, home of a family member, work office, safe deposit box, vacation home, I don't know, anywhere else that you could think that you could put it where it would be physically safe. And this will keep you protected in the worst case scenarios. You're out traveling and your phone gets stolen, being one of those, and you don't have access to your two-factor authentication. That's what this is for, because you can then go in, grab your two-step login recovery code, type it in, and then you'll have access to your account again. You can find it at bitwarden.com/securitykit. We have a couple different versions there that you can type out and print, or just print and then write out on hand. If you want to be sure that there's no encrypted, unencrypted versions anywhere of it. And I did want to call out some community members. You can see I have their usernames listed at the bottom of this here. So that's user U D Jason Penny, and then DJ on the subreddit Shane Nave, and S Hub or Shub. I shouldn't have tried saying any of these, but you can see they're right there.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, you were very brave in trying to say those names. Really appreciate it. We really appreciate the community for providing the thoughts to do this. And we're really interested. And you can find security readiness kit at the links, and we'll drop them in the chat too. Really appreciate it. All right. Now on to Casey, who will discuss our program, Bring Bitwarden to Work.
Yeah, so just a really quick call out. We could see that there's quite a few personal users on the webinar today. Specifically, let's see, I think 10 responded to the poll that we ran. So if you are a personal user and you are already a big fan of Bitwarden, I'm assuming you are, considering you're on today's call, you might want to consider bringing Bitwarden to work. Very similar to what Oliver did, right? So some benefits of bringing Bitwarden to work, right, is fortifying that business security. You're going to be helping to eradicate poor password practices, like storing it in a spreadsheet. It will help you collaborate more securely, being able to share those important passwords to only those who really need it. And then also help increase that productivity, right? You won't be having to search for that password every single time in some random Monday.com board. Right. So if we go to the next slide, just the Bitwarden team put together some resources for you as personal users. If you ever want to bring it up to your coworkers, your IT team, or even your leadership team, we have a really great set of resources for you to bring Bitwarden to work, featuring some case studies, right? So these security customer spotlight. So Oliver's spotlight was one of those that we did, but we have a couple others too. So really just depending on what is most relevant to you as a personal user. There are email and Slack templates that you can easily copy and paste into conversations with different people throughout your company. They're all tailored towards what we think that these people would care most about. And then different resources around how Bitwarden actually brings value to your workplace. So just go check it out if you're interested. Bitwarden.com/bringit will be the link to use. And let us know if there's any other resources that you think would be useful whenever you're having these kinds of conversations in your workplace. That's it from me.
Thank you so much, Casey. Bitwarden.com/bringit. Love it. So yeah, really appreciate it. We're winding down today's Vault Hours. If anyone has any things to discuss, any questions for us, feel free to put them in the chat. Looks like we're talking about passkeys and YubiKeys and such still, and authenticators. But yeah, definitely looking forward to continuing the conversation here. But you know what? One more thing before we go. We do this every Vault Hours, but we have a Bitwarden store giveaway where you can enter to win lovely swag that we have. If you go to bitwarden.com/shop and go to the contact form, say you heard about us during giveaway during Vault Hours 49, you must submit within 24 hours and we'll notify the winner via email. So good luck, everybody. We'll be on here, answer any questions as they come up, but really appreciate your time today. It was a work day wherever you are in the world. Really appreciate you taking time out of your work day. If it's Friday afternoon, evening, really appreciate you taking your weekend with us. But thank you guys so much. Thank you, and stay safe out there.